Hello everybody, it's Mike White with Baby Monkey Studios. Well, I'm coming back to you with another tutorial, and I'm really excited about the topic. It's how to install Xcart. We are going to, walk through every step required to install Xcart from beginning to end. Quick background on me. I'm 31 years old, I'm a PHP programmer, and I use Xcart as my main platform. I'm located here in the United States, and been doing it for about 6 years. Okay, now, the first thing that we're going to need to do is obviously get a copy of the Xcart distributive. We need to get the latest version from our secure help desk on the Qualiteam site. So we are going to navigate to secure.qtmsoft.com, and we're going to put in our email and password that lets us into our personal help desk. And we're going to go to the file area. And we're going to expand Xcart 4.4.5. And you want to download either the TGZ or the zip. These are just different compression formats. I think most people are going to want to work with zip. And, if you have Pro, obviously that's the one you want. But if you have a license for Gold, which is the regular version of Xcart, then that's the one you want to download. Now, I'm choosing 4.4.5 because it's the latest version. But obviously, if you're watching this after that at a later date, then it's going to be the current version, whatever that is. And I guess you can always tell that because it's going to be, the one that's called out here in the list. So let's just click the file. And it takes a second, and then it should just automatically start downloading. At least that's with the settings on my computer, and I'm using Chrome. And what I need to do here is just, show in folder. You couldn't see that, it was off the screen. Now that's going to pull up my downloads folder. And I'm just going to cut that and just go to my, folder for this tutorial and paste it in there. Okay. And while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and right click. I use 7-zip. I'm not going to go over downloading 7-zip, but I'm going to tell it to, extract the files here. And it's going to do that real fast. We'll pause the recording. Okay, it's all extracted, and you see it just made a folder named Xcart. And if I go into that folder, I can see all the different folders and files that make up the software. Now we simply need to get these folders and files on the server, of our website. And so we're going to do that next. The first thing we're going to need to do that is an FTP application. And we're going to go and talk about Filezilla. Now, if you just put Filezilla and hit enter, this is what I get. Filezilla, the free FTP solution, and just make sure you're getting it from filezilla-project.org. I'm sure there's a lot of copycats out there. Now, all we need is the download the Filezilla client, and I'm not going to walk you through that. Basically, you just need to download this file, follow this link. And it looks, pick your platform. There's the Windows. That's the recommended one that most people are going to need. And follow the instructions and install that application. Okay, so once you get it installed, Filezilla looks like this. I'm sure most of you all are familiar with this, but I'm just walking everybody through this step just in case. Okay, well, let's set up our site in Filezilla real fast. What you do is you click this little icon to open the site manager. And we're going to click New Site right down here. And we're going to tell it what the host, and I'm going to call it trainingpin.com. I'm just going to highlight that and copy it over here. And the port you can usually leave alone. This is going to be different for every server. And I want to make a comment that I'm always pretty much using Linux servers. I use the LAMP stack, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Okay, now the protocol for me is SFTP, but it's going to be whatever it is for you. And, I'm going to choose normal. Obviously, you can just play around with these settings when you're doing this because you don't have to, you don't have to worry if it doesn't work. Just, try different settings. Okay, so now we're connected to the server. Now, a lot of times, I'm using a Parallels Plus environment here from hardhathosting.com. And In this instance, we use HTTP docs as the root of the public, documents that people can see on the web. And so we have higher access. You can see up here, I'm at var www.vhost trainingpin.com, and then I've got lots of folders underneath that. That's the folder for this domain. This is going to be different at different hosts, but you're going to have an HTTP docs or a public underscore HTML or some folder. Looking www, that's always a good place to look at when looking for those folders. There's a folder that is the root of your site. Now let's go into that folder. I already have a copy of Xcart here installed, and so I'm replacing it. I'm updating it to 4.4.5, and in your case, the directory may be completely empty, or it may have index.html. It's going to have some folders in there, most likely of some sort. And in most cases, it's okay to just blow away everything in this directory, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to hit Control-A to select all and hit Delete. Now I want to say to more experienced people, there's much faster ways to do this. I mean, you can log in with Shell to your control panel and access your website in a much more direct way and run shell commands that will do this stuff in a blink of an eye. It's a little slow to do things through a FTP client, but I think this is the general way that most people are familiar with. Okay, so I'm just going to again select all and hit delete. Really delete? Yes. Now obviously you don't want to do that if you need if you have a live site. You want to be doing all this in a test directory. Please do not ever work directly on your live site. Make a new directory under your HTTP docs and install your Xcart, your new version in that directory, as opposed to, replacing your live site the way I'm doing here. This is a test website for me. Now, while that's doing that, let's look over here and try to find, my folder that I downloaded Xcart to. So I'm going to go in here. In my documents was where I started. Now I'm going into my video tutorials folder, and see I can expand this if I can't see. There's my installing Xcart one, and there's that Xcart directory with all the files. Now what I'm going to do is just pause the recording and let it finish deleting. Oh look, I'm having some permission denied problems. I'm going to go up there and have to log in as root in order to get rid of some of these files. That's a common thing that happens when an Apache server makes files under a different username than the FTP user that you have set up. So, that's again, permission stuff, and it's outside of the scope of this tutorial. Okay, so that's all finished. And now we're going to go to copying the Xcart files actually to the server. Now, some of you are going to want to put the Xcart files in a directory, and you're going to want to create a directory, by right-clicking over here, create directory, and, naming it whatever you want. For instance, /store. And you want to do that if you have files in the root of your site that you don't want to harm, and you want to just kind of nest Xcart in alongside other applications or other, a main website, then I recommend that path. But for most people, I really recommend just installing Xcart at the root. Now, I believe that Xcart can serve all your needs, to be your main website and your store. That's just my opinion, so I recommend that. And so I'm going to delete this directory. And I'm going to actually go into my Xcart directory, that I downloaded and unzipped, and then select all, Control-A, right-click, upload. And that's going to take a while. It's about 5,500 files. Like I said, it's easier if you can just upload the zip and unpack it, but usually that requires shell access, and I'm not going to walk you all through that. This method works just fine. It's just a little bit slow. Okay, I'm going to pause it and let that finish its upload. All right. Well, now all the files are loaded up on the server, and it took, maybe about 40 minutes to get them up there, so it's something to walk away and get a cup of coffee and relax for a bit. We should be all done with Filezilla, so I'm going to go ahead and close it. And we're right back where we were. I'm going to navigate to the website that we just uploaded the files to. In my case, it's trainingpin.com. and I put them at the root, so that's where I'm going. All right, so we get this happy little message, cannot connect to the database. And we click run the installation script. I'm going to back off a little bit here. Now on this first page, all we have to do is accept the license agreement. And it's not that long. You could read it. Okay, and I left everything just like this because I wanted to, show you all the problems you could possibly have. I'm running kind of an older Plesk environment here. Hardhat offers, very up-to-date Plesk panels and environments, but this server in particular is my test server, and it kind of runs. I keep it lagging behind. I have another one that's up-to-date, but this one kind of proves that this will work on older environments. So if you get a screen like this saying failed, don't worry. You just got some more steps to take. So I'm going to Filezilla back up. And I'm going to reconnect, which I can just hit this little drop down and reconnect right to my server. Now, I don't really recommend storing the password in Filezilla like I have here. I've done it for my convenience, and again, this is my test server. I recommend you keep that server somewhere secure, either in an encrypted file or off your computer, and then you can connect and type the password in each time you connect to the server. Okay, so here we go. We're going to go in and start correcting some of these permission errors that we have. First one we have is checking whether directory files is writable. Catalog, images, and skin, var, and var cache. All of those are the same problem, okay? In this case, we actually have to give it file permission 777, which is world access. That's not a problem unless you're on a shared host, and this is not. It's on a virtual server. So we're just going to go right down the line and set the permissions. You can see the permissions right over here. I'm going to right-click on Files and click File Permissions, and just check Write and Write for group and public. I'm also going to check Recurse into subdirectories, and it's applying to all files and directories. Okay, that should take just a second. I'm going to go and do the images. I'm going to do catalog. I'm going to do var, which is going to take care of that var cache folder. And the last one I'm going to do, and this is going to take a second. Again, a faster thing would be to use shell, but I'm going to just go ahead and do it this way. I'm going to set the file permissions on the skin directory and tell it to recurse, and I'm going to pause the recording and be right back. Okay, so that's all finished. Now we just have a few more files that we need to set permissions on. And one of those is in the admin folder. It's newsletter.sh. So I'm just going to scroll down, right-click it, and set file permissions. In this case, it doesn't need to be writable. It just needs to be executable. And we've got a few more like that in the payment directory. So let's go over to the payment directory. And I'll see if I can remember these. We've got ccache.pl, and it needs to be executable. So 755. And then we have, oh, I gotta look them up. We have csrc.pl and netssleay. Okay. There it is. Again, on your system, you may not have to make these changes. Your server may be configured to just work right out of the box. So, that's why we need to go to the installation screen and see what needs to be done. No need to set these permissions if you already have it working. Okay, so now let's go back and test the install. So I'm just going to hit the back button. I'm going to accept the license agreement again and click Next. Okay, now there's still a problem. Config.php. Here we go. just setting it 777 because I can do that on this server and be just fine. Let's try this one more time. Accept. And now everything's okay. So we're going to go to the next step. Now these are already filled in for me. And this is right in my case, trainingpin.com. I don't have a web directory. If I put it at, the files at /xcart, for instance, or /store, I'd fill that in there. In my case, my host name is localhost. And that's going to be the case on a lot of server setups out there, especially ones that are set up specifically for xcart, like hard hat or hands-on web hosting. Those are going to have this localhost variable work just fine. Now, like some host out there, like 1&1 is one that comes to mind, 1&1 Internet. There you actually have to have know what your MySQL server name is, and you have to plug that in. And you get all that from your control panel. All these things are going to come from your website control panel. And that's what I'm going to do next. I haven't done anything with this. We're going to set up the database and the database user and password. And we're going to do all that within the website control panel. Here we are, all logged into my Parallels Plesk control panel. And this is kind of an older version of Plesk. We're going to go to domains and then the domain. And then the next step is databases. Okay, and I've already got a couple databases on here, and I happen to know I can remove these. They're no longer needed. Okay, so we're going to add new database. Now you can name this anything. It's a good idea to name it something that's secure. Just the harder it is for somebody to guess what this information is, the better off you are. But of course the password is what you really want to be secure. In my case, I'm just going to make it training because I'm not worried. Okay, we're going to add a new database user. Again, I'm just going to use training. Well, let's call it training user just for this tutorial so it makes sense to you guys. And then we'll just make the password. Okay. And obviously for your database usernames and passwords, again, using something that's strange and long and complicated is going to be more secure. Some people are kind of scared of databases and setting up a database. I wish it was more complicated, but really we're already done. We can go to the DB web admin and look at, phpMyAdmin, and we can see it's an empty database. It's all ready to go. We have our user and password all set up. Okay, so we're back to the xcart screen, and I'm going to put in the information. So the database name that I set up was training, and the MySQL password. Oh, I'm sorry. The database name is up here, training. It was already filled in as xcart, and that confused me. The username, I made training user, and the password. Okay, and my email address. There we go. And I'm going to hit next. Now I'm here in the US, so it makes sense for me to install the US language. That's the only one that's available by default. But I also want to put the United States table in, and I'm going to populate it with example data. I'm going to pre-configured for United States. Email is login authorization mode. If you keep this checked, then it's going to use email for usernames and passwords for all your customers and yourself. If you uncheck this, then people can create unique usernames. I really recommend email as login. It just makes the most sense, and people don't forget their, unique username. Okay, so we want to store images in the file system. You can also store them in the database. Let's hit next. And it's going to go through creating the installation. I think we're all done. Let's hit next. Okay, we can select a skin, 3-column. This is the default xcart skin. All the rest of these, have a directory that they're being pulled from. 3-column is in /skin/common files. All the rest of these have a separate directory, the alt skin directory, that modifies the base directory. So I like to start out by just always selecting light and lucid 3-column because I'm going to build my custom skin based on this template in a separate folder. Okay, and it's going to give me a layout preview. And we'll just let it finish thinking, and then we'll click next. I don't want to enable payment PayPal right now. And we'll generate snapshots. I've actually had this not work on several systems, several different server setups out there. If it doesn't, just go through the install again. Okay, and so here we have our installation complete. I usually like to take a screenshot of this page. It's got a lot of important information on it, and it's a handy way to store it. And I just store it in my client's directory. But right now, the most important information is obviously their username and password to log into the admin. That's the first thing we're going to do, and pretty much the only thing we're going to do to finish this installation. We're done. Let's go to the administrator area. Okay. And let's put in... Oh, it had a pre-filled in password for me. I usually don't save passwords in my browser, but I do on this site. Okay, and we are all logged in. It's telling me that I need to register my installation, and that's what you would do. You would actually do that in your help desk at secure.qtmsoft.com like we did before. And that's about all I have for us. I'm going to go and change my password as the administrator. So I just went to users, then users. And let's edit this profile. I'm not master, so I like that. And I'm just going to update the password to one of my common ones. And let's check out the storefront. And there she is. It's all ready to go. Everything should be working. You're not going to be able to check out till you set up some payment methods and shipping methods, but for the most part, you're done. The very next step that I would take is I would go over here to General Settings and click on the company options and change the store name and year it started and all your contact information. But for all intents and purposes, this installation is complete, and you should now have XCard Gold installed. All right. Well, hopefully this has been real informative for you guys and short and to the point. I'd love to hear feedback, any way I can improve this tutorial. Obviously, there's several security things that you'd want to do after this step, and we'll probably cover those in a later tutorial. But for right now, hopefully you have XCard all installed and you're well on your way. Thanks and good luck with your e-commerce. Mike White signing off.